Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Liz Taylor, explorer and ocean entrepreneur.
I'm Sylvia Earle. I've been splashing around in the ocean for most of my life, which is many decades. Explorer in residence at National Geographic and founder of Mission Blue and an ocean elder. Thank you, ocean elders, for making this possible.
Yes, yes, indeed. Well, today, in our last episode, we talked about underwater habitats. These are the inner space stations that allow us to, people to spend weeks, days, months underwater. And today we're going to be talking about submersibles, also known as human occupied vehicles,
HOVs.
HOVs.
Yes.
A really important way for us to have the gift of time underwater. So I'm going to try to share our screen here today.
So Liz operates a company, and their motto is "Our business is going under."
Well, maybe.
It's all about submersibles and remotely operated vehicles.
Yeah.
Access to the sea.
But the most important thing is to remind everyone with Earthrise that
The world
is
is
blue.
blue. Never forget that.
Exactly. So let's close the hatch and dive in.
Climb in
Climb
first,
in,
and
yes.
then close the hatch,
Yeah.
and then
So
dive in.
then dive in.
Yeah,
So here I am and getting ready to dive a little sub in the
little
Bahamas.
yellow sub.
Yes, a little yellow submersible in
Tribute
the
to the
Bahamas.
Beatles.
In the Bahamas, getting ready to go down on a vertical wall and look for things like deep water sea pens and so forth. But people are always asking, what is the difference between a submarine and a submersible? So a submarine, the biggest thing is what? It has no windows.
No, it would be distracting to
It
the
would be
people
distracting
inside.
to the mission. So basically, a submarine is typically a very large system. They're actually an underwater boat, and they will be used for long duration missions. So they'll
Mhm.
travel really literally around the world.
They can. The
They
nuclear
can. The
subs
nuclear
do. Mhm.
submarines, some are diesel electric, but they
They see with sound. They use sonar.
exactly.
Try not to bump into things, although occasionally they do.
Well, that's why we need to map the ocean,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So, as opposed to an HOV, human occupied vehicle or submersible, which the main features of it really do include things like a very large, typically clear personnel sphere or a dome or hemisphere of some sort, so that you really are focused on the view.
Hmm.
These typically carry 1 to 3 people. Sometimes the ones for touring tend to be up to, larger for up to 10
Hmm.
people at a time.
Even more. There's some
40
the big,
passenger ones.
yeah, for as many as 40 individuals, like a big bus to
Right,
go under. They don't go very deep, but at least people who would otherwise not get under the surface have access to go visit with the fish.
exactly. But the most of the submersibles are designed to be fairly transportable, and some of them do have a mothership that they return to, but they go really traverse the water column versus going very long distances,
Yeah, up and down.
up and down versus here to there,
Hmm.
and really going along the way. Um, this is the Johnson Sea Link. In our last episode, when we were talking about habitats, we talked about Project SCORE with the Hydrolab. And this is the submersible that was used on that mission to actually 2 of them, but they traveled down the wall, across the wall.
Well, the back part of it allows people to swim in and out. The front part is closed. I mean, you have to get in and out at the top, but the back portion has a hatch at the bottom, and I was able to swim out of that. Mostly, however, it was used, they call it like a taxi for underwater exploration, and it actually was very successful from the late 60s right on up until not so long ago. They're now retired. There are 2 of them,
Right.
and it's sad we've lost that access to the sea, but they really did a great job while they were there.
And one of the interesting things with this is that while you were on this expedition, you discovered
Oh,
a
yeah,
brand new species of seaweed.
yeah,
And
little
what did you
green.
what did you call it?
Well, what else could I call it? I named it after the submarine that took me down over the edge of the wall. Johnson Sealinkia
Johnson
Profunda.
Sealinkia, yes. But what was that first, what were your first submersible experiences like?
Well, this was not my first sub. My first one was also involved with Ed Link. It was called the Deep Diver. It also had a lockout chamber, and I was able to explore. In 1968 was the first time I had a chance to use a sub. I've used more than 30 different kinds over the years, but this one actually has my fingerprints on the outside as well as the inside. It was built by the company that we were both very much involved with, Deep Ocean Engineering. We built um, two two-person systems and this solo system. It's like a submarine that you wear. You get into it, and it's so simple to drive that even a scientist can do it.
Well, that's a fundamental thing right there.
So,
But the submersibles are really designed to be portable. Here we are with the Deep Rover 1, and we had to take it to Crater Lake. We wanted to take it and look at the deepest lake in the United States.
yeah,
But how do we have to get it in there? We had to take it with a helicopter.
it was
Kind of crazy.
amazing. A flying
Flying
submersible, not submarine.
submersible.
And that is the clearest, some of the clearest water in the world. It was amazing. Light penetrates very deep, and it was amazing to find they're actually moss, an aquatic moss, not algae, but a kind of, you think of moss is growing on rocks. Well, this too was growing on rocks on the deep part of Crater Lake, which is one of our national parks.
It is. It's just an amazing area. But
Ah,
really, your dream machine
that's it.
is one that involves that very clear sphere,
Mm.
but to be able to go to all areas of the sea, all ocean access.
The
And
deepest parts of the ocean, because if you can go to the deepest parts, you can go anywhere. And that's now the case, but it wasn't the case not so many years ago. Only, well, we'll show a picture later of the first dive to the deepest part of the ocean in 1960. And here we are, just now beginning to have regular access to the deep sea. Well, it's not exactly regular, but we're beginning to use a technology that is there to be applied.
exactly. But one of the things we learned during the research study working on this submersible called Deep Search is that glass is perhaps the strongest, lightest
It's
material,
ideal.
ideal material for the personnel sphere to give us that unobstructed view. And most of the deep diving submersibles in the world use steel or titanium with small viewports mounted into it.
Right.
But there's always been this desire, and we've seen the use of glass. It's very successful at full ocean depth for cameras, for instrumentation.
Yeah.
But why do you think there's such I guess it must be like a fear of glass for use
Well,
in human occupied
I
vehicles.
think people have the perception that it's true. Glass breaks. You can pick up a glass and crash it on the floor, it'll break. But under compression, glass gets stronger. It has to be the right kind of glass. But there are materials now and ways of testing that takes the mystery out of it. We obviously don't want to take stupid risks in going deep. We want to take kids out into
Right.
the ocean. Why shouldn't? Think of how many people go 7 miles up in the sky watching films and eating lunch and taking naps. Why should not we have access 7 miles down
And
regularly?
it's true. I mean, certainly the technology is there for very comprehensive testing of all kinds of materials.
Yeah.
That's why submersibles, when they're used in common application of taking scientists or students or anyone else that cares to
Moms,
go.
dads, teachers, anybody.
But it's very important for the submersibles to be classed, which means that the whole design is peer reviewed as you go along during the build, and that's really the benchmark of what makes a submersible safe and
It's
reliable
insurable.
and insurable, and
Mhm.
it really makes it much safer than getting in your car.
So most of the clear materials currently in use, down to at least 1,000 meters, it's acrylic.
Acrylic, right?
Looks like
Exactly.
glass, but it is not. There's no reason why it can't be, especially for spheres to go to full ocean depth. It's
Yes.
going to happen.
Yeah, it
Just a matter
certainly
of
will.
time.
But it's using these materials, we've been extremely successful in really getting good access to the ocean with acrylics, hopefully with glass one day. But from 1994 to 2004, we dealt with the Sustainable Seas expeditions
National Geographic, 5 years. Yep.
and Goldman Foundation, uh,
Richard, yeah, in
and
San Francisco. Yeah.
right here in our backyard. But we took the Deep Worker, which was a concept vehicle at the time, and really kitted them out to make them useful to science. And over the course of those multi-year expeditions, we had the collaboration from many different organizations, everybody from NOAA to the Mexican Navy to oil and gas interests, made platforms available to use these little submersibles.
We had the Coast Guard and the Navy and U.S. Coast and Geodetic Survey, all partners in this, and universities all around the country and some outside the country. It was so great. We even had a teacher who became a pilot. We had kids get inside and try it out. Again, so simple to drive that it's like, I don't know, but from a personal experience, it's supposed to be as easy to drive as a golf cart.
It's very true.
Golf carts are as easy to drive as the Deep Worker submarine.
Deep Worker. It is really nice. You kind of drive it with your feet.
Yeah.
You use your feet, and your hands are free to operate the manipulators and camera systems and so forth. But it was a challenge to really make these really useful to science because they don't have a lot of payload, and you can't really see the seabed too well. But they really did a phenomenal job.
That's what the cameras are for.
Yeah,
when you can't see what's right below you. But we did actually, in Hawaii, work with a passenger
submersible
sub, and teachers just loaded with kids. Atlantis, they call themselves submarine, even though it's a submersible.
Yeah.
Let us borrow it for a day, so kids got out of class to be able to go and see what their backyard is like beneath the surface. Some of them were already swimmers and surfers, but to actually go down like 100 feet beneath the surface and be there, and there are two of us in the little Deep Workers cruising around taking pictures of
buddy diving.
Buddy diving, exactly, just like the way divers do. Little submarines that you wear. So, a big old manipulator. Huh? So
that's great. So there's a handful of deeper diving subs all around the world. We've got a few of them here to highlight. This is Alvin, and kind of the old tried and true workhorse.
Yeah, it was first launched in 1964. It's gone through many iterations, and it's still called Alvin, but it's got a whole new suit of clothes, if you will.
It sure does.
Inside and out.
And of course, Russia with its pair of Mir subs made famous in the Titanic movie,
mm-hmm.
and other. It's actually been used in
two of them. Again, they buddy dive.
Buddy dive, yeah.
Right. And the Shinkai 6500, I actually had a chance to use that to go not quite that deep, but to more than 4,000 meters beneath the surface off the coast of Japan. Really a wonderful experience. But China is actually leading the way with research submarines for repetitive use. This is the Sea Dragon, the Zhilong, and they are going with another submersible currently in the works called the Sea Dragon to go as deep as the Trieste went back in 1960, and Jim Cameron in 2012, 52 years later. This big gap in terms of really deep ocean exploration.
But here we can see the comparison between Trieste in 1960 and Deep Sea Challenger in 2012. The really interesting thing with Trieste is that large sort of brown body of the vehicle is actually filled with aviation fuel.
It's like a balloon.
Yeah, it was more like ballooning than diving per se.
Because it's lighter than the fuel. Gasoline is lighter than water, and they had to weight it. They used tiny little pellets of steel that were magnetically held in place And then when they came back to the surface at the end of their 20-minute half-hour dive to the deepest part of the ocean, they dropped, they let the magnetic uh, hold go, and so there's still a little pile of steel spheres at the
That's
bottom of
true.
the ocean
And
somewhere.
most of the deep subs do that. They leave behind some kind of
Wait.
weight.
Mm-hmm.
I won't quite say what albans are called, but but with the Jim Cameron Deep Sea Challenger, he similarly used that steel shot
Mm-hmm.
as a way that they could kind of
Magnetically
adjust,
held. Mm-hmm.
magnetically held. And most of them also have like a large release weight
Mm-hmm. Usually lead.
yeah, typically, but some of them use steel.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little more friendly, and it will eventually corrode in the
Mm-hmm.
ocean and be harmless. And
There
here,
is James Cameron.
there he is. So we at DOER we worked quite a bit on this submersible, and we built this manipulator arm for him for full ocean depth.
And
And
note the Rolex.
yeah, note that he put a Rolex on the wrist of the manipulator.
Actually, they had one on the Trieste as well. This was like a tribute back to that original deep diving timepiece. And they, when Jim let it be known that this expedition was going to happen, uh, Rolex went busy off in the wilds of Switzerland and came up with a timepiece that kept good time the whole time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's a and the other thing that's really interesting with this dive is that he's not like a small person, right?
No.
So, and this is a one-person sub, and he had to, sort of cram himself into this tiny, again, steel sphere, and so this is where we really showed that yoga is extremely useful to becoming a submersible
That's
pilot.
right. He was like a pretzel in there, but he was able to withstand it. And
Exactly.
again, in his case, he used mostly the camera for visibility. The cameras have really become so much better than they were back in the days of Trieste
Mm-hmm.
in 1960, or when I began diving, even before then. But oh, there's no substitute for actually having your own eyes right there and to be in a clear sphere. That
Right.
really is the next step.
It really is. There's so much that you just see just from your peripheral vision that
Mm-hmm.
when you're looking through a camera, it's very much a tunnel vision.
Yeah, you're
So
back. Mm-hmm.
being able
That's right.
to really see is so important. Oh, we've got one more sub here.
That's the Geelong,
Oh, there's Geelong again. You're
mm-hmm.
right.
The sea dragon, now the next generation is called the rainbow fish, and
That's right.
China is building a multi-person submersible to really explore, and again to go repeatedly. The trick is not just to go once and come back, but
No, it's
to be able to
repetitive
stay
diving.
and do it and make it available for research or for, we hope, in due course,
But
making the public
yeah,
acquainted.
but coming back to the the clear spheres, this is the two-person deep rover.
Mm-hmm.
Here it is on the edge of a brine pool. It's our friend Mandy Joy in
Mm-hmm.
there, and
In the Gulf of
in the
Mexico.
Gulf of Mexico. But these clear acrylic subs, they've really kind of seen quite a quite a number of builds of them,
Dozens of them,
dozens
actually.
of them really. But this particular sub has been in service. Again, it's the one that we helped to create and build,
1986.
starting right here in the living room,
That's right.
with some of the design work, but really getting going. And it's one of the hallmarks of these science subs is that they're expected to have a lifespan of 20 plus years
At least.
at least,
Mm-hmm.
and to be a little bit future proof. You want them to be able to adapt over time. And these little, 2 or 3 people is a great number to get in there and go down and collaborate with.
This is a little deep sea that operates off Cocos Island in Costa Rica.
Yeah. But
Ah.
really, the next, the 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 new dream is building these two little guys, the Deep Hope submersibles, really designed to take people wherever you really want to go, down to that beautiful edge of the twilight zone.
Right. And so crafted that anybody in this sphere can take the controls and be the pilot. You can
Hmm.
be 10 years old and you can be piloting a submarine,
Yeah,
or you
it's
can be 110 if you want to.
but one of the really remarkable things about these small submersibles is it gives people who, for whatever reason they can't scuba dive, they've got something wrong with their ears, they, whatever limitations they might have, but they're able to frequently dive in a submersible without any kind
Yeah.
of issue, and spending again, uh, hours well below scuba diving depth.
And I really, really want to see kids as explorers. Everyone's an explorer when you get below where divers can go, because even within diver depth, there's so much to explore. But if you go to 100 meters, if you go to 1,000 meters, what really got me started on submarines was reading this when I
Summer
was a
reading
kid.
assignment.
Yeah, when I was a kid. This is Half Mile Down by William Beebe. And his descriptions with his engineer buddy Otis Barton.
And a woman scientist at the surface, artist at the surface.
She was taking notes, and Beebe would come back and describe the weird and wonderful fish that he saw while he was there. And then she actually drew the pictures of the fish that were famous in National Geographic. There's one of them, little submarine, but it had a cable, a tether
Right. And
back to the
most
surface.
modern submersibles don't have that tether, which really kind of sets them apart from ROVs and such. But
And here's
yeah.
Jacques Picard's version, Half Mile Down. I mean, this is 7 miles down. In 1960, when he went with Don Walsh, and
That's
Don
right.
Walsh is writing his book about many adventures. Started
Exactly.
with what didn't start in 1960, but it's continued with many adventures since then,
Yeah.
including going back. I mean, what's amazing is just in last year and this year, repetitive dives to the deepest part of the sea using technology that is available. You don't have to
Readily available.
readily available. And Victor Vescovo has succeeded in having a submarine built to his specifications. He wanted to be able to dive repetitively, and he's
Sure.
taking some of his friends along, such as our friend Kathy Sullivan,
Yeah.
skywalking astronaut who's now been to the deepest part of the sea. It's great that it's now demonstrating we ought to be able to do this. It's not a technological challenge. It's a challenge of the will. Do we really want to explore this planet from the inside out? We really
And
want to know our home?
and why is democratizing access to the ocean so important?
Well, if you don't know, you can't care. What we do know is that the ocean is in trouble, and we really need to be there to observe, measure, document, get to know our own blue planet. The world is blue.
True that.
Let's go.
So one of my favorite submersible dives was using the Pisces submersibles over in Hawaii. Um, this is a picture that I took with my phone through the porthole of the
These
Pisces.
cameras are getting better all the
They
time.
are, but yeah, shot on iPhone. But this one is actually a wreck of a submarine
Huh.
uh, from
That,
World War
that
II.
doesn't sound very good.
I know, right? But this submarine was intentionally sunk.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
it was actually this is a really fascinating one because it was a submarine aircraft carrier,
Oh,
which is just strange to think to contemplate. But it was a submarine that carried airplanes in a hangar. It would come to the surface, launch the. It
sneaky.
was very sneaky, and so once it was captured, they decided to sink it. But it's a great wreck, and we go down and look at it to see um, and understand the growth that happens over time because we really knew
Mm-hmm.
exactly where, when, and where it was sunk, and then we can go back and see what kind of animals are living on it and what
Mm-hmm.
happens to it over time. But on that same expedition, we revisited the area that you went to with the gym suit, and the gym suit is it's like wearing a submarine, but technically it's called an atmospheric diving suit. But again, one atmosphere, no decompression, you're dry and warm inside.
Mm-hmm.
Um, But
I
what
even
happened?
had snacks.
You had snacks. Of course, you had snacks. You always take snacks in submersible diving. But um, on this expedition, um, you were walking around. It's almost like it looks so much like a spacesuit. It's really kind of interesting, carrying
In
around your
fact,
life support
as we
system.
said during our last episode, this system had a rebreather. Actually, little submarines are like rebreathers
Hmm.
because the air supply is limited, and you have, unlike being on an aircraft where you can refresh air to some extent, here you just have to take all the air with you, and you rebreathe the same air. You scrub out the carbon dioxide with usually it's a material that
Soda sorb and
soda
soften the
sorb, yeah,
lime. Yep.
soda lime,
Yeah.
and that is included in your backpack. And make no bubbles, and you can stay for hours.
Hmm.
I had, it turns out, on that dive in 1979, as long walking on the ocean floor 2.5 hours as the first astronauts did walking on the moon, 2.5 hours. But
But the big thing is that when you're walking around on the bottom of the ocean in Hawaii, there's life,
critters,
critters,
yes, yes,
and these are these bamboo corals that you were able to see them when you come up and kind of touch some of that big claw hand
right,
um,
in the dark.
in the dark.
Hmm.
What did they do?
Well, they burst with firefly like light. I was just astonished. I had the sub, I went down on the nose of the
Star.
Star 2, little two-person submarine, and then I walked off and spent my time walking around on the ocean floor and actually touching corals. There are so many forms of life, but this one is bioluminescent, and it was remarkable. But I just have that in my mind. I took this photograph, but I it doesn't show the bioluminescence.
No,
There weren't any cameras that could do that at the
no.
time.
But we went down and we looked at the coral beds and checked them all out. But the amazing thing about this particular trip is that a few months before I had been at a diving trade show, DEMA, and I wandered around as I do, and I went by the Canon stand, the Canon camera stand, and I saw this odd black box sitting there, and I was like,
What's
what is
that?
this?" And the guy at the counter said, it's an experimental camera we made, and we're not really sure what to do with it, but we just brought it along because we
It's
thought
cool.
it's cool. Then he went on to explain that it was a 4 million ISO camera, which means that it can shoot in color in almost complete darkness. And so there were only two of them in the world, but thankfully I was persuasive and I convinced Canon to loan us the camera to go back and see if we could record these deep sea corals and revisit this place that you had seen in 1979 for the first time.
And this was in 2016.
2016, we went
Yeah,
back and we took a bunch of kids with us.
we did. That dream of having kids go deep. There's
Oh,
the camera.
here she is with the camera.
Yeah. I let the kids operate the
Okay,
camera
the
though.
camera is the tiny little part. This massive lens that they also loaned
Yeah.
to us was pretty awesome.
Probably cost as much as a submarine.
Right?
Anyway,
But
here's one of the kids from inner city Washington who had never actually been at the ocean before, and we took him all over the place, including going down in the submarine. It was really great.
he was such a great kid. He said he was just didn't really like the ship too much. He felt like a little seasick, and then he got down in the submersible with you, and he's like, I don't want to come back.
No, he loved seeing the different shades of blue. We did a film at the time with National Geographic, which helped sponsor the expedition, for the film called Sea of Hope.
Hmm.
And so we had, the idea was to take kids around the country and introduce them to the ocean. And here's another one of the heroic teenagers using his own camera to, actually he made this very cool observation of a ray that lifted the edge of its fin to lure fish inside. He just very quietly sat on the bottom and lifted made like a little cave,
Yeah, it looked like a cave, but it wasn't.
and then fish would go in and clomp. Their big ray
It was a
would
fish hotel,
have
right?
lunch.
Yeah. But it was so interesting because again that ability with just fresh eyes on
And
something
mines.
and minds to
Hmm.
go down because they dove these Pisces subs out in and around Hawaii for many, many years, and this is the first time that anybody had observed the rays doing this particular behavior,
Yeah,
and so
but Finn was there
and just saw it.
and recorded it on
Yeah.
his own little camera. So,
And here we are setting up to look at some of these corals. You can see the bamboo coral is kind of like a big whisker sticking out of the seabed in front of the sub.
and then,
Oh, and just more
so,
of these ancient corals around here.
yeah, these are not just hundreds of years old, they're thousands of years old. The next slide, I think, may show some of the really
Old fish
old
too.
fish, right? They can be a century or more old, but the corals, thousands of years old. And cruising around, one sub taking images of the other, looking at the gold coral. You see it looks kind of yellowish there. They're among the super old corals. They've been dated to be several thousand years old. All right, lights out.
Yeah.
Camera on.
You know how we have the one thing?
Yes.
Turn off the lights to conserve power.
Yeah.
Do this in submarines too, in submersibles as well. So
it's a good one thing. There we
but
go.
look, here we go. You know, gently touching the coral
Oh,
and watching it light off.
fireworks.
It's just incredible.
Amazing.
And shot in complete darkness.
Just enough light so that you've got that deep sea blue. Even though this is at 1,200, well, 400 meters, it's still um, just extraordinary. There's one more little glimpse of this in action.
Oops. Oh, let's go back. Sorry. There we go.
Can't get enough of it. I hope you feel the same excitement that I still feel when I see this happening. Bioluminescence is happening all the time out there because most of the ocean is dark all of the time. And it's one of the most common forms of communication on the planet. Bioluminescence. We'll talk about that, I trust, at a
Future episode.
Yeah,
we could talk forever about bioluminescence.
It's just amazing.
But again, getting the kids out there was like, for me, was one of the highlights of this trip. And having them involved, working directly side by side with the scientists, helping to get some samples. Here, picking up a coral that turned out to be a
new species.
A new species, yeah.
So, yep, that's bringing it home. We had the images, and with very selective samples. Scientists in the past have used
trawls,
big nets, big grabs. You just blindly operating from the surface. You don't know what you're going to get. You know it's going to be interesting, but you just break a lot of things on the way. And when you get things back to the surface, they're just a jumble. You have no idea what lives where or anything of the sort.
It's one of the most important things, I think, in using a submersible, is it does give you not only that gift of time, but the opportunity to really observe for hours at depths that you would never be able to just with scuba. You're not being subjected to the need for decompression. You're dry, so you don't
anybody can go in a submarine.
Anybody can go. You're just
like
not
getting into
cold.
A car.
Yeah, and it's just such a unique thing. It's an important tool to keep really active and alive in marine research. It's perhaps the most important tool.
So we can talk about submarines forever.
Yeah, we could. But
we're gonna
go to questions, but right before we do, we're just gonna remind you that next time we're gonna talk about sharks.
Yes, we are.
I am gonna go.
Some of our best friends are sharks. We need to be their best friends.
We are. But yeah, we are gonna take questions. Oh, if I could stop screen sharing somehow. I'm trying. Here we go. Maybe. Oh my God. There we go. Now we're back. Yeah, it looks like we've got a lot of questions coming through here. All right, so Melody's asking us, did you feel any difference to your body when you go into the depth of the sea in a gym suit or any type of submarine?
My body is very happy. No, the great thing is you're at one atmosphere, and it is like getting into a car or maybe into an airplane. There's a slight difference in pressure in an airplane, but in these little submersibles, very small pressure differences, only because you want to reduce the pressure inside a little bit to, as they say, draw a vacuum. It isn't a vacuum, but it'd be really sad. But it's to make a good seal when
Mm-hmm.
you close the hatch.
That's
But
right.
no, it's as comfortable as sitting here in this chair. Are you comfortable?
Oh yeah,
Yeah. All right.
and I'm very comfortable in a submersible too.
Yeah. And
It's
the
really,
view is
and the view is
priceless.
wonderful. Yeah. We have another question. I've heard that submersibles like a Deep Hope are very expensive. Uh, from a producer's point of view, how do you think many people can experience the journey of a submarine? If there is more demand, will production costs be lower? Well, the submersibles of the acrylic type, they really are designed to have a lifespan of at least 20 years. So we
Minimum.
minimum. So typically we build them in pairs so that the cost per unit does come down, and over the span of their life, they're quite one of the most affordable vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but for the Project Deep Hope, it's about a $5 million undertaking to build two
Two.
of them, plus
Mm-hmm.
all their support equipment, and have them ready to go off of platforms of opportunity around the
So,
world.
how much does a helicopter cost? How much
More
does
than
a
that,
yacht cost?
way more. Private airplane, way up
Oh,
there.
oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
So,
But the hope here for Deep Hope is to find sponsorship so that those who get to use it are there primarily as guests. And that means kids, teachers, scientists. And if we are able to find the right sponsorship, it's, a
it really
gift to the
is.
world.
It is.
To, to because little subs are transportable, they can be taken virtually anywhere on a truck, on an airplane, or by sea, of course, but they don't have to have a dedicated support ship. That's one
Right.
of the great things about the new generation of acrylic submersibles. They're meant to be transportable.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some do have a dedicated support
Sure.
vessel,
Yeah, some
like the
do.
Alvin has a mothership. They stick together.
Yeah.
But anyway,
So
we're really
Sherry's asking us, are HOVs primarily electric? Yes, they are. And traditionally, they would use like sealed. Well, the early ones used like sealed car battery, but
you know
now they're
lead acid
lead acid
batteries.
batteries. But um, more and more, we've moved across to using the lithium ion and different lithium chemistries to give us more duration
Later,
and make them lighter as well. But
look.
yes, they are electric, and you just recharge the batteries overnight and go again. Or sometimes you have multiple banks, and you can come up and
Oh, I
swap them out.
really look forward to the new generation of batteries that don't require lithium. That I mean, there are alternatives in the works. Batteries, not just for cars, not just for storing solar energy, but for access to the sea. There's so many applications that we need to get away from using materials that are expensive and hard to get to and or cause destructive mining, whether it's on the land or in the sea. I equate some of these metals that are being used as, if you've seen Avatar, you know about the material known as unobtainium. It's kind of where some of these rare earth materials are. We have to look at alternatives.
We certainly
The
do.
chemistry is getting there, and it won't take forever. It can't happen soon enough.
So we've got some people that have their hands raised.
Oh, okay. Let's
So I think
see.
we've got. Looks like we have Ryan and then maybe Kalen. So Ryan, do you want to unmute and ask us a question?
Huh. Oh, Ryan.
Let's see.
He's been helping the ocean.
Wait, I think he's got a live question for
Oh,
us.
okay. Is that the same Ryan?
I don't know if it's the same Ryan, but okay. He's also typed a question to us, so we're going to ask the question here. We'll read the question.
All right.
He says he's 13 years old and has been helping the ocean for a long time. He wants to know if there are other opportunities for young people to go down and learn with us in submersibles, and how do you find out about future opportunities? So, I mean, that's the real goal for Deep Hope is to have these opportunities to get
Mm-hmm.
kids and we always host a few summer interns. We can't this year, of course, but typically we have college interns that work with us,
So
and
high
we
school kids
high
too.
school kids
Hmm.
sometimes, but we work to get them out in the field, and we work with different nonprofits that are actively engaging kids, some of the public aquariums, really just to get started in the
Hmm.
sector. So there are lots of opportunities out there, but it's a challenge right now. But I'm really glad for things like Zoom that can kind of help us connect with people in the interim.
Yep, for sure.
So the day will come.
And meanwhile, learn everything you can about submarines. You could become really knowledgeable, and that makes you valuable.
Right.
Um, any skill that you can acquire in terms of whether it's engineering or learning about the ocean. I mean, I loved reading when I was a kid. Now it's more beyond reading, all that still works. But the videos that are available, you can connect with people like Liz uh,
And
and me. And before, go back a few years ago, it was much more difficult to get up to speed quickly. I'm so impressed with the kids of today, how much they know that I could not know. Nobody knew that now is available for everyone. You've really got a jump start on those who are such as I, who started a few years ago.
so we have the question from Carolyn. Um, Thank you for doing this. I'm a middle school teacher. You've mentioned several times you'd like to see kids able to go in submersibles.
Yeah,
How do we propose funding that? And P.S. She had the privilege of diving in Alvin.
how about that? That is a
It
privilege.
is. It takes a long time to get an Alvin dive.
That's part of what
That's part of the
pushed
problem.
pushed me to work to start building submarines.
Exactly, make them
And
more accessible.
right,
So, um, let's see, Jenny asks, why do you think there's such a focus on space exploration while mostly far too little attention and money is paid on the deep sea? Yeah, now you're really going to start pushing her buttons.
I think that's the great mystery of the sea. Why don't people care? I had lunch with a famous playwright and scuba diver, and also a stateswoman, Claire Booth Luce. And we talked about that very question. Why do people are so enamored with going high in the sky? And why is there so much support for doing that, whether it's aviation or space? And she said, well, it's very simple, my dear. Heaven is up there, and you know what's in the other direction. There may be something psychological to that, but all right, you got to get over that. For us, for those of us who've actually been in the ocean, heaven is down there.
Well,
It's glorious,
it's so beautiful just to be able to turn off the lights,
Mm.
again, saving energy, saving power, but and as you're descending or ascending and just watching that light
Oh,
show
the
go on, the
bioluminescence, yeah.
bioluminescence is just beautiful.
But I think it is changing. Witness the rapid growth. It was 52 years from the Trieste going to the deepest part of the ocean to 2012 with James Cameron going by himself solo to the deepest part of the ocean. And then, boom, 2019 and now 2020, people going repeatedly to the deepest part of the ocean. But we still have to push the engineering envelope. We're using technologies that basically already were off the shelf, the
Yeah.
kinds of things that you could assemble. But going with new batteries, new materials, the glass is there to be done. It's been possible from an engineering standpoint for decades,
Hmm.
but we have to assemble the will. That's the missing piece.
Yeah.
And knowing that the ocean is critical to our health and to our survival, as well as all the other things that people attribute as good things that the ocean provides for us. But it's in trouble. And unless we go flat out trying to understand the ocean and take care of the ocean, it's going to cost us dearly.
Yeah, it certainly is. It already is.
Already is. Yeah.
So Christina is asking us, Since today is World Whale and Dolphin Day,
Oh, we
have you
should.
ever encountered a whale in your deep sea exploration?
I have encountered whales deliberately during a project that started back in 1977 by diving, going to where whales tend to get together and hoop it up to have offspring, the humpback whales in Hawaii in the wintertime. And otherwise, I've seen whales underwater, yes, but seeing them from a submarine, I have not personally had that experience, but the Atlanta submarine in Hawaii with a boatload of passengers had a whale come by and look through the porthole. It was so cool. I mean,
And
these are curious animals, and so
well, I mean, so many animals are curious. You had the experience of a big octopus coming over and kind of
oh yeah,
suckering the little deep worker and
we danced underwater for
danced underwater and another story came back of someone who was down in one of the deep workers and a swordfish.
oh,
The swordfish
I
just
saw
came.
that.
Was that you?
Yeah,
It came like whooshing past,
yeah.
and then it just threw its fins out and stopped. It was like put on the brakes. It came back. It kind of their eyes about the size of a softball. It's enormous, and it just like whipped all around the sub, checking you out.
I
And
turned the light out because
turned the light out. Yeah, and
the swordfish have actually, maybe because they're confused, I don't know, but one actually penetrated the sail of the Alvin with its spear.
mm-hmm.
I didn't want that to happen to me
No.
or to
In
my
fact,
little self.
one of the questions here from Florence is asking us in the depths where there isn't a lot of light, does shining a bright light change
Mhm.
the environment or alter the animal's behavior? And it
Absolutely.
certainly
Yeah.
can.
It's one of the reasons that when I had a chance to use the Shinkai 6500,
Oh, we made that special red filter for you, didn't we?
that's right, to
Yeah.
go over the light. Red is not, at least to most creatures apparently, uh, does not is not perceived. We can see in red light, but most deep sea creatures cannot. They see in the blue range of the
Mm-hmm.
spectrum. So the bioluminescent range enables them to see there. So we used that red filter on the lights, and we could see the creatures that were there, but it didn't disturb them. It's one of the things that we've learned over time that some of the deep sea fish might actually be blinded by the light that is taken down. They just are not accustomed to that intensity or duration of lights. It's hard to take pictures without light, but now
Mm-hmm.
with the low light level cameras coming
Yeah.
online, that can be solved.
Yeah. And it really is a problem, but there are solutions there too.
Yeah, that's right. We learn as we go.
And Abby is asking us that she says she's going to be a freshman marine biology student at Northeastern,
Great.
and that you're a huge inspiration. But she's asking if you had access to HOVs and submersibles as a student, and if not, when did you first begin to use them in exploring?
Well, I was a young scientist in '68, and I participated in a project by invitation from Ed Link, who built this wonderful little submarine along with John Perry called the Deep Diver. It had the lockout capability, and he, unlike what we have done with the ROVs and submersibles, where scientists and engineers work together to have, here's the purpose that we want. How do we design for the purpose? What Ed's question was, I've got this beautiful submarine. Now, what do I do with it?
Right?
And as a scientist, my role was to say, okay, here's what you can do with it. And exploring the ocean, it's kind of a no-brainer. There's so much out there. What you need is access. But uh, Ed in the Johnson Sea Link did work with scientists to say, well, we need to have manipulators that can do this. We need to be able to bring back samples. We need collecting baskets. We need suction devices. So the engineers could solve the problems that were put to them by the scientists, and together came up with something that the engineers alone couldn't do and the scientists alone couldn't do. It really makes a lot of sense.
And that's really what
Mm.
we find ourselves at DOER doing, like, all the time.
Yeah,
Someone will come to us with a problem. We need to
problem
be able to
solving.
pick this up. And even with Jim Cameron said, we made a suction sampling device that went onto the end of the manipulator so he could kind of suck in delicate animals into these small aquarium
Mm-hmm.
containers. And we made one that had like a rotating uh, aquarium holder on it so you could get multiple specimens and things that take sediment samples and
Mm-hmm.
a whole gamut of tools that are
Mm-hmm.
part and parcel. But it's tricky because you keep wanting collecting more, but you can only take so much on the sub. To be selective, or we have to build something. We'll build an elevator to bring the stuff back. Okay. Abby's asking us, how long do solo exploration research trips to the deep part of the ocean typically last?
Well, hours. Um, it really is a matter of how long do you want to stay crunched in a little space. Um, Bathroom facilities are limited. You
Or
can take
non-existent.
you can take food with you, of course,
Yeah.
but I think the mirror subs have duration of like 15 hours, and dives of 4 or 5 hours are really pretty comfortable.
Hmm.
Imagine being able to go a half mile under the surface and not have to decompress. You've got hours down there. You can just sit on the bottom and be a witness to what's going on and go back to exactly the same place a few hours later if you want to go back and have a cup of tea or whatever. And it's that repetitive and pinpoint look ability to go. Now, remotely operated vehicles can stay longer. They don't need to have lunch, but on the other hand, they they can't do what a human can do. And we need both. It's not either or. A lot of people try to make it that way. Oh, ROVs are cheaper. They don't get tired. You can leave it out there for a week and get images. Well, great, do that. But you still need the human who can tell the story.
That's right. And there's really nothing like it, being able to go down there and be curious, be able to follow a hunch. It's been famously said that you can't surprise a robot.
They have no sense of humor
No sense of
either.
humor. So it is really important to be able to go down and make those
Oh
direct
yeah,
observations.
both. I mean, ask any astronaut. Is it okay just to have satellites up there? We need all those instruments that just stay there, and they don't get tired. Well, they do eventually,
They do.
but you know, we need all the tools. But we should never discount the importance of what you carry around on your shoulders.
That's true.
Really, I mean, ask Captain Kirk. I mean, Spock
I
gets it too.
guess Spock
Yeah,
gets it. It's very logical.
it is.
Well, we've kind of run over our allotted time,
Yes, we have. Oh
and
goodness.
so we'll take one last question here from Ryan, who's asking, um, is there a title and author of Submersible kids book, which inspired you, that you talked about earlier?
Well, I did one called Dive that describes how BB inspired me and went on to build submarines and use submarines living underwater and all that. And um, the National Geographic has ocean exploration, um, exploring the ocean books, and I'm working on one right now. If you can wait a year,
Very good.
that is going to cover the tell-all
The
about the
tell-all.
ocean. I hope, including a large chunk of it dedicated to um, ocean exploration. I mean, the submersibles and all of that. There's a historic diving society. Check it out. They have a periodic publication that describes the great adventures of people who have, over the years, not just by diving, but also using submersibles.
Yeah.
And if you think about the potential that's out there, this really is the edge of the greatest era of exploration ever. You think about, oh no, it was in the 1500s and before then, the great era of exploration. No, we're just beginning. You're so lucky to be coming along right now because there's so much that needs to be done. And why can't you be out there in front at this time? Most of the ocean has never been seen by anybody.
That's true.
I mean, maybe 10%, maybe probably not even that. We look at the top, and when submarines are used, they tend to go at the bottom. The biggest part of our planet,
that vertical
the ocean
piece.
is in the in between part. That's the real ocean, not the top, not the bottom, but everything in between. And new tools are coming along every day, and I think the bright young minds that are coming up, coupled with some of those seasoned individuals who've been around working together to solve problems, look for problems that need to be addressed. But the main thing is, you're going to be surprised. You just
Absolutely.
don't know what's there, but it's going to be great.
And please do follow along with us as we make progress on Project Deep Hope. We
Yeah,
have a
Google it.
deephope.org.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just follow us along. And, next time come back and we'll talk about sharks.
Yes.
And those are such a misunderstood species.
Yeah, they probably think the same of us. Why are you killing us? They
And
were
why?
probably thinking,
Yeah.
they don't understand.
Yeah. but,
So,
but until next time, please remember to take care of the ocean.
as if your life depends on it, because
Because it does.
it does.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.
We want to first thank our hosts for diving, Dr. Sylvia Earle and Liz Taylor. This was an informal, informative, and really fun conversation on what we can learn about our planet and ourselves by looking at our planet through the lens of life underwater. And to thank each of you for attending and participating. If you have any additional questions or suggestions, please send them to mytownhallquestions@gmail.com or leave comments on Twitter at #DiveInWithUs. Thanks as well to our sponsors, Ocean Elders and Medley Media, for hosting and producing this event. A recording of this conversation will be available on Ocean Elders' YouTube channel shortly. Please check out our new summer schedule of events and note that we are live on Thursdays, not Fridays, throughout the summer months. Check out our Ocean Elders Facebook and Twitter feeds for all future events, as many pop up impromptu. Please do send us your suggestions and topic that would interest you. For the book lovers, we've included a complete list of books by Dr. Sylvia Earle for your reference, and if you want to discuss any of these works, even consider a reading group, please let us know. And finally, we encourage everyone to participate in the #OneThing campaign created by our sponsor, Ocean Elders. It's an easy and fun way to join a global community of individuals who are adapting their lifestyles one little piece at a time to take better care of our planet collectively. See One Thing on Twitter. Thank you very much.